Our last speaker this evening is Britt Pasiechnik, I believe it is. Britt was born and raised on a mixed farm east of Ponoka. As the youngest of three and the only girl in the family, she spent most of her days growing up trying to keep up with the boys. She developed a love for running the tractor in front of any implement, the spring calving season, and the long endless summer nights of the prairies. After college, Britt moved to Saskatoon just to see if the roads were as bad in Saskatchewan as she had heard they were. And even though they were, she remained a resident of Saskatchewan for the next 10 years. She worked in the transportation industry for several years before she and her husband, Colin, had an opportunity to move to Lloydminster. Knowing that Alberta was where her heart had always been, she jumped at the chance to return. Britt worked in the oil field until 2014, experiencing firsthand the boom, the bust reality that is the energy sector. With the local economy in a slump, prospects for a career looked slim. However, it was during that slump that Britt was introduced to financial concepts that set her on the path to becoming a financial educator. Fast forward 6 years to find Britt helping individuals and families chart their paths forward towards financial freedom, starting with the most important aspect, education. So welcome with me, Britt. She's going to share some ideas about what the new Alberta will look like.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. It's always fun to come in as the last batter when the game has been won, and I just get to look good. So, because I'm not quite as charming as Tanner, and I didn't think to come through the curtain with such panache, I'm going to start off with a joke. A climber fell off a cliff, and as he tumbled down, he caught hold of a small branch. "Help! Is anybody up there?" he shouted. A majestic voice boomed through the gorge. "I will help you, my son, but first you must have faith in me." "Yes, yes, I trust you," cried the man. "Let go of the branch," boomed the voice. There was a long pause, and the man shouted up again, "Is there anybody else up there?" Oh, that wasn't such a good joke. I'll give you another one later. My husband convinced me that was the best of the best, so we can blame him tonight. We can also blame him for my last name. So, when I get asked to speak at these events, I could go on for hours and hours, and I'm sure that would excite everybody here if I did. But what happens is I get overwhelmed almost by what people need to hear. Because having worked in finance and pull back the curtain a bit as to what is happening to average everyday Canadians, I get mad. And I mean so mad that it almost becomes, it takes control of me. Because I know that everyday Canadians, just like us gathered here in this room tonight, have been at the mercy of financial institutions for much too long. 45% of Canadians currently have reported that they are spending more than they earn. 45%. This was as of January this year. And 40% of Canadians doubt they will ever be debt-free. That is a scary scenario to look down the line towards. In 2022, the federal per-person debt is projected to be $47,000. That is the third highest amount in history, just behind 2020 and 2021. And it's 25% higher than it was prior to COVID. So I'm going to be 40 here right away. And when I was born, October 5th, 1982, it was $3,500 and change was the federal per person debt. It has grown astronomically in such a short time. We are running out of time to right the ship in many different forms. When I talk about finances, I know from looking at the inside of things that we have been the target of financial institutions. One of the things that I get so upset about is that this year, for the first time in 10 years, took 10 years for the government to mandate that banks and financial institutions are no longer allowed to sell you services and products that are not in your best interest. They had to put that into law. June 30th of this year, Consumer Protection Act now protects you from being a target. And I ask people, at what point in your life would it have been okay for you to be a target to the banks? What 10-year period of time are you willing to forgive the banks for bad advice or for targeting you with products and services that weren't in your best interest, right? I asked this question last week at an event. How many people here have read their mortgage document from front to back? Right? There's crickets, and not the kind we're going to be forced to eat, okay? But that's because we intrinsically trust these institutions to be looking out for our best interest. But unfortunately, it's leading us down a path that we hope we have a chance to return from. But when we owe $1.83 for every dollar of disposable income, okay, disposable income is what you get to keep after you've been taxed. We in turn now owe $1.83 for every dollar we earn. People are filling the gap between what they earn and their expenses every single month with credit cards, more and more credit cards, and not understanding how that interest accrues. It's scary, right? Compound interest is a very powerful, powerful force. Einstein said it was the eighth wonder of the world. But if it's working against you, it is going to keep you trapped for life. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they're having to turn to even worse ways of gathering money, and that is going to cash loan stores, right? Those payday loan stores that we all know. In Canada, legally, a company can charge you, a financial institution, a bank can charge you 60% interest. That's right, 60. But here's where it gets even worse. Those payday loan companies, they don't fall under that same rule. They're legislated by each province. And in Canada, your APR, so the yearly amount of interest that you would pay on a loan that you get from a cash store, is 400 to 600%. That doesn't seem possible, but it is. Math doesn't lie. This is what we're facing, right? We are seeing a time when we need hope more than ever, but we need financial education. And financial literacy, I was talking to a gentleman before, it doesn't exist. It doesn't happen in schools. It doesn't happen in universities. It doesn't happen before you sit down across from a mortgage broker or a financial specialist that says, we're going to put you $500,000 in debt. We're going to buy a house. There's no prerequisite to understand what you're actually doing, how much you're going to pay for that house, how long you're going to be beholden to a company. None of that stuff is discussed. So we're targets to the banks. And the only way that we can stop being targets to the banks and financial institutions and insurance companies, that can go on, is to be financially literate. And that is the goal of APP, is to educate people about the prosperity that is ours, the independence and the freedom that can be ours. At the same time, in order for us to be financially prosperous and free, we need to understand and explain to the financial institutions that have had us under their thumb for so long that we get what they're saying. We speak their language, and therefore they actually have to treat us with a degree of respect. A third of Canadians are coming out of retirement to go back to work. A third of our seniors are coming out of retirement to go back to work. Before COVID, the average Albertan was $200 away from not paying their bills every single month. Since inflation has taken its toll, Albertans are facing $450 a month in new bills, new expenses. Something has to give. So people are choosing not to pay certain things on a monthly basis because they can't afford to. Meanwhile, we're watching as banks this week, they're just beginning to announce their quarterly results, their quarterly profits. The first bank did so today, and the rest will follow suit for the rest of the week. And good news, everybody, they've made billions. So happy for them, right? They've made billions, most of it from debt, from keeping us in debt, from interest that we pay. 50% of Canadians say that they aren't even investing because they don't know how. They don't have the confidence. There isn't anybody that they know that they can trust. And we aren't saving enough. It's now considered a luxury to have enough money at the end of the month to put some money aside to save. So we know that another pandemic, another moment where we are caught off guard is going to plunge more and more people into bankruptcy, insolvency, poverty. We need to stop that, especially here in Alberta, where we know that we are hardworking, we're industrious, we've always found a way. So we need to find a way to be financially literate, to make this a conversation that we have. There are rules to money, and if you don't know these rules, look them up. They're not hidden, they're just not talked about. The rule of 72 tells you how quickly your money is growing for you or against you at any moment of any day. Rule 72. Understanding how to pay off your debt to pay less interest, right? Do you think that a financial institution who has your debt, who has your interest payments, is going to teach you how to get out of debt faster? That's going to cut into their profits. They're not going to teach you that information. It's out there, it's available, but they're not going to teach you that information. We need to understand the rule of paying ourselves first, treating ourselves like the most important bill that exists out there. We need to understand what an emergency fund is supposed to do. We need to understand that cash is king again, right? That credit is just a way to keep us beholden and in debt and in case basically slaves to the banks. So as I finish, because I know we've all had enough of sitting in this heat and we like to have a refreshment afterwards, I just want to offer a message of hope, knowing that we are currently on this path that seems hard. We're taking a stand, and we're taking a stand to make a difference for our generation right now and the future generations to come. So with that, I'm going to finish off with one more joke, and hopefully this one gets a few more laughs. A taxi passenger tapped the driver on the shoulder to ask him a question. The driver screamed, lost control of the car, nearly hit a bus, went up on the sidewalk, and stopped inches from a shop window. For a second, everything was quiet in the cab. Then the driver said, "Look, sir, don't ever do that again. You scared the living daylights out of me." The passenger apologized and said, "Well, I didn't realize that a little tap would scare you so much." The driver replied, "Sorry, it's not really your fault. Today is my first day as a cab driver. I've been driving a hearse for the last 25 years. What a great send-off. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.